It's quite tempestuous in Miami today. It's been raining nonstop. Are you impressed? I know the word tempestuous because you should be. So lately I've been thinking about this concept that I want to share with you guys. And it's the concept of the anti-model. I'm coining a new term. And what I mean by this is you always hear about role models, right? Like the idea of a role model. Like you grow up looking up to somebody, or even as an adult, right? Like you have like a business inspiration, a creative influencer inspiration, or like a mentor. And it's funny because I feel like I've had more what I call anti-models than role models. Especially as a gay person, I didn't really grow up with that many references where I could even potentially have role models. I've said this before, I think in another video, but when I was growing up, I only had ever heard of two gay people, Freddie Mercury and Elton John. And Freddie Mercury died the year I was born of AIDS, out of all things, right? So how tragic is that, right? For kids who grew up my generation, or even before that, to think like you only have, in this case, two references, and one of them is dead. And out of all things they could be dead of, they're dead from AIDS. So I feel like I've spent a good portion of my life, even as an adult, having anti-models, like people who I don't want to emulate. People who I meet, whether it's men I've gone on dates with, whether it's family members, friends, peers, professional, contacts, people I've worked with, or even growing up like public figures that I'm like, I have to make sure I don't emulate this person. I never want to be like this person. I think as a gay person, that's especially relevant, right? Like friends I've had or people I've met who will put themselves through such like precarious, dangerous situations for the validation of a man. Or even like the guys I've seen on apps, especially when they're of a certain age, and I'm like, wow, this person is this age and still has the instinct to be so like mean-spirited and immature in a profile description, right? Like saying, no femmes, no Asians, only reach out to me if XYZ, and in a way that's very off the bat, you're like, this person's only gonna attract equally, not superficial, but just like substanceless people, or people who are openly like bigoted or whatever. So I'll have this instinct of like, I want to make sure I never become like this. Like no matter what happens in my life, I'm not like that now, and I need to make sure that when I'm that age, first off, I don't want to be on these kinds of apps. Definitely don't want to be this sort of unevolved emotionally in terms of maturity. Or even I'll think about guys I went on dates with who at the time made me feel so insecure or isolated just from the complexes that I could tell they still had. And I have more compassion for somebody who, let's say, is in his 20s still figuring stuff out, but I'm talking like men I've gone on dates with who were in their 40s, let's say, and still were grappling with their sexuality. Or even like I remember talking to a guy about a year ago on Grindr who was in his 40s, and I remember he said to me that one of his biggest things in a match has to be masculinity. And I just remember thinking, you're a grown adult man and you still feel the need to mention that. When you're attracted to somebody. Like I can tell just from a picture, just from the body language, just from the way I can tell whether I can kind of envision how the person is in real life. And sometimes you're wrong, right? Sometimes people misrepresent themselves, or like you meet them in person and they don't look like their pictures. But I was just thinking, wow, this is a grown ass man and he feels the need to state that you need to be masculine, you need to be a certain level of masculinity. I have my own thing with attraction, as I mentioned before in a previous video when it comes to masculinity, but like I would never feel comfortable voicing that in a way that could potentially make somebody feel self-conscious or ashamed or feel like they're on the chopping block. Like I can't understand that. And so that's yet another example of like, I want to make sure when I'm that age, I'm not that unevolved, to be honest, in terms of like emotional maturity and like knowing how to interact with other human beings. When it comes to anti-models versus role models, is this something that you guys also relate to?